Hello and welcome to Morton Grove Village Happenings. I am your host for today, Pat Craig, and today we have a panel of very distinguished individuals. First of all, to my far right, to your left, is Secretary of State Jesse White. Welcome, Mr. White.
Glad to be here, Pat.
We have State Representative John D'Amico of the 15th.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you here. And we have our Mayor, Dan Staackmann.
Always a pleasure.
And there are a number of topics that we're going to cover today, but first I understand that, Mr. Mayor, you have a couple of questions or comments regarding the Secretary of State's office and its relationship to Morton Grove. So I'll just kind of toss it to you at this point.
Well, a lot of people think, the Secretary of State basically is just your license plates and your driver's license, but that job has really expanded. And I can say firsthand that the village is benefacted by the cooperation of the Secretary of State's office sharing their database with us. Are all license plates registered in Morton Grove? We correlate that with our vehicle stickers now so that we know who bought vehicle stickers and who didn't. And that's only fair. If one person buys, everybody should buy. The other thing that the village benefits greatly by is the Secretary of State is the head librarian. And he secures certain funds for the library in Morton Grove each year. On a lighter note, he's also Jesse White of the famous Tumblers that's been in Morton Grove for as many years as we've had our 4th of July celebration and many other events that we've had. And we sincerely thank you for doing that and bringing those young people here, and we've enjoyed it tremendously.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And Secretary White, as long as we're talking about your office, I know that there are a few areas that the mayor didn't cover. Would you like to share with our viewers some of the other things that the Secretary of State's office does, say specifically regarding business and registrations?
Well, Pat, you're absolutely correct. I run the largest Secretary of State office in the nation. 4,000 employees, a $396 million budget, 138 offices, and 23 agencies. I'm the head librarian for the state of Illinois, and I have 5,000 libraries that come under my jurisdiction, and we distribute about $77 million a year to those wonderful institutions of learning. And then I'm also in charge of the literacy program. We have 215 agencies, and we distribute $6.6 million a year, helping individuals who come to our great state to learn English as a second language, to obtain a GED, and to become better educated, better informed. And then, of course, I run one of the largest organ and tissue donor programs in the nation, where here in Illinois we have 5.6 million people who have become organ donors. However, there are 5,000 people on the waiting list as we speak, and each year about 300 people die because organs have not arrived in a timely manner. We ask that when you're alive and well, give blood. When you're no longer here, give organs, and we've done those two things, made a positive impact upon society. Corporate files and securities, you keep the sealed quota claims, stickers, state IDs, the list goes on and on.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I know that from doing my research that you're the second largest office in state government. I couldn't find out what the first largest was, but the stats that came off your website said that you are, in fact, the second largest. But most folks in the state and in the village have their closest relationship to you when they either go to get or renew their driver's license or when they are getting or renewing their vehicle registration. And part of the reason that we're here today, one of the things that we want to cover, is I know that your office has been very instrumental and very concerned about motor vehicle safety and driver safety. And recently, I believe it was originally passed in 2009, there was a state law passed that banned texting while driving. And that's a bill that I believe Representative D'Amico was instrumental in. My question, first of all, is, quite honestly, why a bill to ban texting when we already had legislation that prohibited distracted driving?
Well, what happened was there was a lady down in Champaign, Illinois, who was driving an automobile and texting at the same time. and there was a young man well off the road, well off the beaten path, and she struck and killed this young man. And then we established our distracted drivers task force down in Springfield, and Representative D'Amico was a part of the discussion, part of the committee. And we decided that when an individual is driving an automobile, they're looking at their cell phone, they're thinking about what they're going to say, they're concerned about the sentence structure, they're concerned about spelling, and then they have to hit the keys while all of that is taking place. The question is asked, who is driving the car? No one. And so Representative D'Amico took the bill like he has taken on many occasions, bills that have an effect upon people getting from point E to point B. He took the bill, had it introduced in the General Assembly, it was passed, and as a result of the passage of that bill 2 years ago, over 2,000 people have been convicted of driving while texting. Now, you know and I know that there are people who drive and text on a regular basis, but it's a law enforcement issue. But I just want to applaud, commend, and thank Representative D'Amico for being a good representative of the people of his district, but more importantly, joining with me in helping make the roads of Illinois the safest ever.
Well, I can certainly agree with the fact that even with the law, there are people that text. There was a young lady that I was next to on the Edens yesterday, and I've seen impaired drivers who were under the influence that drove better than she did. So
Well,
as
and I'd like to tell you too, I mean, you know, when you're texting and driving, it is equivalent to being drunk driving. You know, the average text message takes about 5 seconds, and in that time, if you're driving an average speed, you're going to travel about 100 yards. So when you think about it, when you drive 100 yards without looking at the road, what's going to happen? Nothing good.
well, this is
You know,
true.
and I also want to commend the Secretary of State because the Secretary worked with me. I mean, when I did this bill in the House, it's not like this was a slam dunk. There was a lot of no votes. There was a lot of opposition. There was no filed opposition. But we had to work the roll call extremely hard, and I couldn't have done it without the help of Secretary White as well. And for the life of me, I don't understand how, to this day, some of the people that voted no, they can't give me a good answer why, except they kind of think it's too far reaching. But I'm like, when we're losing lives on the roadway, we need to do something about it. And I think it's our job as legislators to try and stop it.
Well, that brings me to a question for you, Representative D'Amico. The bill has been law now for a little over a year and a half, almost 2 years. Has there been any significant decline in texting-related traffic accidents or traffic fatalities since the law went in effect? Has this law had an effect?
What I can tell you is we have done a number of bills that we have put in place, you know, starting with the texting and driving, increasing the hours behind the wheel from 25 to 50 for our teenagers, our graduated driver's license. All of these bills put together, fatalities on the roadway have been the lowest since 1921, for 3 years in a row. We have had a 50% reduction on the roadway in fatalities when all these bills all got coupled and put together. So I think what we've accomplished has been great. We want to continue it. I mean, I'm not going to be satisfied till there's 0 fatalities on the roadway. I mean, that's the way I look at it. So, you know, I think what we're doing, we're on the right track.
But a 50% reduction in
3 years in a row.
3 years in a row is quite an accomplishment.
Well, I'd like to chime in on how I really became associated with this gentleman. There was an accident that took place, I think in Lincolnwood. He called my office and said, I'd like to have an appointment with the secretary. And so I said, well, okay, fine, make sure that the representative's given an opportunity to come in and talk with me. The discussion started out by him indicating that he had there was this accident in his district, and he wanted to change the driving age from 16 to 18. And I told him that I couldn't join with him on that, but we could increase the number of hours behind the wheel with our young people. Well, then it went a little bit beyond that. We thought that that was a good idea, but then we also had some hearings and decided that we would really embellish or increase the time that the young person would spend behind the wheel. Instead of 3 months or 6 months, 9 months. And then the parents, young driver could not have only one, and could have only one unrelated person in the automobile for the first 1 year period of time. Then there were times when nighttime driving would create a problem for the young driver. So 11 o'clock at night during the week, on weekends, and then 10 o'clock during the week. And then there were times when individuals would get a ticket and they'd go to court, represent themselves. They'd get involved with speed racing or drag racing. The car is impounded, they go to jail, they lose their license. And then some of the school districts would spend just 1 hour behind the wheel with the young driver in driver's ed. Now they're required to spend 6. And then we put a contract on our website where parents could pull off the contract, both could read it, the child and the parents. They would both affix their signature to it. And then we also gave parents an additional tool, the ability for them to petition our office to get a PIN number. So that now they can find out, go into our system and find out how well the child is driving or how poorly the child is driving. And as a result of all the things that I said and more, Representative Miko is right on target. There's been a 50% reduction in the loss of lives in the hands of our teen drivers.
Very good.
And Pat, I can touch on something that the Secretary's right on when he says that we had an appointment, we talked about a bill that I introduced raising the age, to raise the driving age to 18. Now, that bill never made it to committee, never got voted on, but I look at it as being one of the most effective pieces of legislation ever introduced, because what it wound up doing is it made all the parents sit down and talk with their kids. I did more TV and radio interviews because this is not a right. You don't automatically get to drive. This is a privilege. And it created a great discussion, a great awareness amongst kids and families. It's a dangerous thing to be out there and driving a car. Take it seriously, and thank God we established this graduated driver's license, and we got this stuff all into law, and it's working.
Pat, one of the beautiful things about this bill was when it was proposed, not a parent was upset about it, but the kids were upset. They thought that they would, number one, the driver's license age would increase, and they didn't like the idea of having to spend 50 hours behind the wheel with their parents and 10 hours at night, and then with the nighttime restriction. And then I would travel to the high schools across the state of Illinois, and I would say to them, you may not like me now, but when you reach the age of 21 and you're alive and well, you're going to love me. And so
That's right.
we're proud of the fact that this partnership that we've had, and the graduated driver's license is alive and well here in Illinois, and other states have taken our lead. And so we've received national and international praise for our effort to save the lives of teen drivers.
Is there any movement on state completely outlawing the use of handheld cell phones?
Well, Representative D'Amico had the bill down in Springfield, and I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to let him speak after I finish this. And that is, I'm going to listen to the experts before I chime in to say I'm in support of it or against it. But I do think that he's on the right track by at least introducing the bill in Springfield, so there could be a fruitful discussion, and then of course some wonderful things will result as a result of people talking among themselves and talking with the legislators about how many lives could be saved with a ban on driving while driving.
I liken it to the known smoking rules. For years, certain communities outlawed smoking in public places and had their own smoking rules. It wasn't until the state came up with a uniform code that everybody was on an equal plane. And speaking as a representative of a community, it's difficult when one community town outlaws something, you come into another town, you do it, and it's very difficult for police officers to not have a unified driving code.
Sure. You know, there are about 17 cities in the state of Illinois that I know of that there's a ban on you using a cell phone within that particular municipality, but then you go a few miles to the north or to the south, there may not be a ban, but then you travel 4 or 5 miles later, then you're in an area where you cannot use your cell phone.
See, it's just speaking from a municipality standpoint, it's easier for us if it's uniform.
Sure.
Yes.
And I think it's easier for police, and it's easier for residents and people that drive. Okay, this is the law of the land.
Well, and to touch on that too, I mean, when you bring it back to the texting and driving bill, I mean, banning a handheld cell phone makes enforcing the texting and driving bill that much easier, because you're not supposed to have it in your hand. And on that note with the cell phone bill, I introduced it this year. It passed out of the House, got 62 votes. There was no formal opposition to it, but a lot of no votes. Again, some people keep thinking that it's a big brother issue, but I keep coming back with the same thing. You know what, I've been to a number of seminars out in Washington with the secretary, and when I see these people continuing to lose their life, this isn't big brother. We got to do something about it. And so now the bill is in the Senate. I'm pretty confident in the veto session, we might get
You
it
said
passed.
the big brother aspect of that. You said earlier, driving is a privilege, it's not a right. So you're not taking any rights away from anybody by restricting a
right.
handheld unit. So
That's right.
I'm very, very in tune to personal rights and what you're entitled to. But this is a privilege. And if I'm giving you the privilege, why are you endangering somebody else?
Well, that's it exactly. You know, you're driving a car, you got to be responsible not only for yourself, but you got to be responsible for everybody else on the road. You know, and when you're on that phone, I think it's a huge distraction.
Can you give us some sense of what is contained in the bill that you have passed, as far as what some of the provisions are?
Basically, to get to the basics, it's just banning handheld cell phones. So if you want to put your phone on speaker, if you want to talk on Bluetooth, or if you want to talk over some cars have it where it comes over the radio, you're fine. We don't want you driving down the road like this with one hand on the wheel. I'd like to see this other hand free to possibly grab the wheel and avoid an accident.
I'd like to share something else, since we're talking about cell phones. We came with the idea that we should have a ban on the use of cell phones in school zones and construction zones, and Representative D'Amico was a sponsor of the bill. Can you imagine, I taught school for 33 years, and I know for a fact that when kids are on the playground, the ball happens to roll out into the street, they're not gonna stop to look both ways. And so we want people who are driving on the roadway to have that additional set of eyes out there to care for this young person who may one day help run this great country of ours. So we want to make sure they become better educated, better informed, and live a long and productive life. When it comes to the construction area, the individuals are family father of a family, and they want to go at home at the end of the day to be with their loved ones. And that will not occur if we have people who are driving in our construction zones talking on their cell phone, because many times the pathway will curve and will do things that are not normal. So we want to make sure you keep your eyes on the pavement, and of course we also want you to keep your eyes on the construction worker as well.
A question occurs to me that if a driver is distracted speaking on a cell phone, holding it in their hand, would they not still be distracted speaking on a cell phone, concentrating on their conversation, if it were with a Bluetooth or a speakerphone?
There's no doubt it is a distraction, but it's not as big. You're 4 times as likely to be involved in an accident if you're holding a phone. So, I mean, I agree with you, but I don't think it's as much as having that handheld cell phone. I mean, there's something about when you have this phone pressed to your ear, you get engrossed in this conversation. Anything else, if you tried to ban everything else, I mean, you wouldn't know if a person's driving in the car if he's singing, talking to himself. I mean, I think it's totally unenforceable. At least this, the police officer can see you holding the phone to your ear.
John, if you can get that law passed, do us all a favor and get a decibel law passed, so that when people got their radios blasting so you can hear them 4 blocks away,
Right.
how can you possibly hear if there's
I
an
agree.
ambulance or anyone coming around you? And I hear that constantly,
Right.
and it is annoying. And I don't understand how they can drive like that.
Well, I think that when they want to listen to the music, I think they should roll up their windows so they can enjoy it. I don't necessarily want them to listen to
No.
it. The other thing that's good about what we're doing, and that is, if by chance you're involved with an accident, your cell phone record could be confiscated or be obtained. They could see what you were doing at the time of the accident. So that's the beauty of catching someone talking on their cell phone or texting.
I also would like to bring up a point too. You know, it wasn't too long ago, I mean, quite a few years ago, they introduced a bill to make us wear seatbelts while driving a car. And a lot of the same arguments that are here in front of us for the cell phone ban were the same arguments that were made back then when Senator Cullerton at the time
That was there.
ran that bill. And I mean, now, today, almost 97% of the people that get in the car put a seatbelt on. I think that this is gonna be somewhere along that, you know, down the road, quite a few years. I think people will eventually get in a car and be like, I can't believe that we used to drive and talk on the phone at the same time. Because right now, our kids get in the car, automatic, they put a seatbelt on. Whereas when I was a kid, you rolled around in the back of the station wagon. I mean, you didn't, I mean, you know.
Yeah, we put a new ban in place too, that everyone in the automobile must be properly affixed with a seatbelt. And can you imagine two people or three people in the back of the car, and you have a head-on collision? The people in the back become what is called a human missile. They will be propelled forward, and of course, terrible things will happen when that occurs. So you cannot get in an automobile without buckling up.
Secretary White, I've visited your website, and I know that there's an awful lot of information on there. I believe I saw something that goes through a checklist of how to safely drive, and it covers not only texting and talking on your cell phone, but other things. Is there anything else on that website that our viewers should be aware of?
Well, first of all, when you're talking about driving, I stopped a person the other day who was throwing some garbage out of her car, and I pulled alongside of her and I told her who I was, and it reminded her that when you get caught here in the state of Illinois discharging debris out of your car window, it's a $1,500 fine. It's a 1-year period of time in jail. So I'm a former military person and served with the 101st Airborne Division, and I was a Scoutmaster, Cubmaster, Explorer Advisor. So almost every day as a Scoutmaster, every day as a military person, spending 10 years in the military, going on police call, you pick up debris. And after you picked it up so much, you kind of hate to see someone throw it down. And so I thought that your listening audience or your viewing audience should know that tossing debris out the window is a no-no. And I tell kids they should not ever get involved with that ugly act of throwing garbage, throwing their waste on the street. And then I was in Zagreb, Croatia with the tumblers. Beautiful city, loaded with graffiti all over those beautiful buildings that they have there. It was a shame, and it hurt me deeply to look at these beautiful buildings that were scarred with and marred with graffiti.
Again, in the texting ban law and in the handheld law that you're looking to pass, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I read that one of the penalties is a suspension or revocation of license. Is that for a second offense, I believe?
Well, it could be if you wind up getting the 3 punches on your driver's license. If you get a ticket for texting and driving, and in my bill for the handheld cell phone, it's a moving offense. I mean, the way we looked at it is, you know, if you really want to get serious and get people to stop, you need to have real teeth in the bill. You know, the city of Chicago has a ban on handheld cell phones as well. It's a $100 fine. Nobody's paying attention to it. I mean, they get stopped. I mean, $100 is a lot of money, but a lot of people just pay it and go on. But now, if you get a punch on your driver's license, I mean, if you get stopped 2 more times, 3 in 1 year, you're going to lose your license.
So the answer really is enforcement,
Yes.
as Secretary White said. And so if this is an area that needs to be brought up to law enforcement, then...
Well, and I can tell you this, at the, we had a distracted driving summit with Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood, and we had a number of villages throughout the state of Illinois that were there. Secretary was there as well. And you cannot believe how many police departments are doing undercover stings on this. And one of the things that they're doing is just standing at the stoplights. Just standing there. And people are just pulling up, texting, and not paying attention. And all the officer does is say, pull over, pull it over. And one by one, before you know it, this I don't want to mention the town where they were doing it because I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but they were very successful in enforcing this.
Okay.
I know you asked a moment ago some of the things that are on my website. We're proud of the fact that we have one of the finest websites ever devised by a man or woman. You can look up and almost anything that you want and find it on our website. The other thing about my office, and that is the fact that we are inundated at times from people calling, asking us about why you raised the license plate fee or the sticker fee or whatever the case may be, and we have to remind them that I'm only the messenger and the collector. I cannot raise a fee by a penny, nor can I reduce it by a penny. And of course, there was a bill that was introduced to provide $2 from the license plate fee to the parks. And they asked me what was my attitude about it. I said, don't have an attitude, but I know that when it comes time for the person to buy the license plate, one of the things they're going to do is complain about the fee.
So who raises those fees?
The General Assembly
John?
and the governor.
Yes.
But they do it for good causes, for good reasons.
Well, gentlemen, we've only got a few moments left, and I know that the mayor would not be happy with me if I didn't ask this following question. And that is, if you can give us some specifics as to what each of your offices have done or are doing or are contemplating doing that will specifically help the residents of Morton Grove and our viewers.
Well, I can tell you what I do as a state representative. I mean, I try to be out and about throughout my entire district as much as possible. And our job as legislators is obviously to put new laws on the books, vote on the budget. I'm very proud of a lot of the bills that we have been able to get passed. I don't think there's anything more important you can do than trying to save somebody's life. And I feel that a lot of the bills that I have introduced have done that. And that's all in result, that's from people in the community coming to me with ideas, things that I introduced that bill to raise the driving age to 18 because parents came to me because of a horrible accident in my district. And they wanted to see if we could do something about it. That's how I got involved. So that's what you do as a representative. You try to represent the people, and hopefully you put good laws on the books that are going to help the state of Illinois.
I'm concerned about public safety. I'm also concerned about public service. When people come into my 138 offices seeking the various services, we want to make sure that they're treated in a highly respectful manner, and that they no longer have to bring their duffel bag, sleeping bag, or the lunch pail. And then, of course, if you're a senior citizen, you're disabled, or you're pregnant, we take care of you first. You're in and out. And the other thing that we're proud of, and that is the fact that we've gotten involved with the Disability Placards Program, where you have a blue placard which means that you're permanently disabled. Red means you are temporarily disabled. The green means that you are a transport of people who are disabled. And we put some fines in place for those who abuse the system. For the first offense, it's a $500 fine, and of course you lose your license for 6 months. The second is a $750 fine, you lose your license for a year, and the third is a $1,000 fine, and you lose your license by way of revocation. So it's going to be tough for you to get your license back after you have done something that I consider to be a violation of all laws of human decency for you to take advantage of a program that's been set aside for someone who's truly disabled.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, do you have anything further that you'd like to say?
No, just I appreciate all the work that Representative D'Amico has done for the village. He secured a lot of grants for some of our streets and a lot of our activity, and he really went to bat for us when Dempster Street was being redone. And Mr. Secretary, I'm very happy to say that through your database, we've collected over 400 vehicle stickers that normally were never bought before. And it's just an equalization for people. You live here, you bought a license here, everybody else has one. Now we're almost at about 95% of everybody registered. And that's a tremendous shot in the arm for us, because that revenue is desperately needed.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a wonderful discussion. We've covered a lot of ground. I want to thank Secretary of State Jesse White for joining us, State Representative John D'Amico, and our own Mayor Dan Staackmann. And I want to thank you, our viewers, for joining us. This has been Morton Grove Village Happenings. I'm your host, Pat Craig. Join us again next time.